Hi, it's Brandon here from thirstgym.com. Today we're talking about an exercise called the Sumo Rack Pull versus bands. All right, for this exercise, what you're gonna want is a barbell in a rack with a rod and pipe based system or a safety catch based system set to the position that you ideally want. So you're gonna kind of work on the range of motion of your deadlift that you really need to focus on. This is a little bit high for me because this is about as low as this rack goes. If I were to do this exercise, I would do it in my other rack that I can get pretty much to the bottom of the floor. But ideally, I probably want this barbell somewhere around mid shin to the top third of your shin. That we have to focus going around your knee. The other thing I've got here are my band pegs in my rack. If you don't have band pegs, you can use dumbbells or something similar to that nature. But I've got them around my band pegs. I've got the top half of the band on the actual sleeve of the barbell, and the other part of the band is not. Now, that's just to give me a decent amount of tension. If I wanted more tension, I could certainly put them all on there or increase the tension of the band, and I will still get that same effect. The bands are obviously going to create more tension as I continue to pull, which is then going to force me to work on my lockout or my glutes and hamstrings at the top of the range of motion or getting around my knee, as I kind of mentioned. Now, we're just going to get in our normal sumo stance here. So for me, this is about this width. It is a little bit hard to see because the bar is not down the floor you're used to it. So you usually use the power rings or the non-knurled part of the bar to kind of determine where to put your feet. It's a little bit harder to do when it's already elevated, especially when it's this high in the range of motion for me, because this is not a range of motion that I would train my deadlift in, particularly for me. But you get the idea that it's in a position that I'm not used to. But regardless, I take my sumo stance here. If you don't happen to have a rack wide enough that you can get your feet underneath it, so these are nice that I can actually get my feet underneath the rack. You may not be able to do this. You probably have to stick with blocks. But nonetheless, you just want to still get your feet in the normal position that you would. Then I'm going to take my sumo grip, wedge in, lock out, down. Re-wedge, and then one more time. So as you can tell, that's not a big range of motion for me, which is why this isn't exactly a great exercise. For my particular deadlift, I would prefer to have this much lower. But you get the idea that you can adjust the pins to wherever you need to. As I mentioned, usually you're going to want them about halfway up your shin to about a third of your shin is kind of the sweet spot, because it's going to put you in a disadvantage-based position. It's also going to make you work on your rate of force development from that. So you're going to work on blowing through your sticking point, especially with the bands and the accommodating resistance. But then you're also going to teach yourself how to maneuver around your knee, which is where a lot of lifters get stuck in their lift. Is usually either conventional or sumo, doesn't matter. They're usually right here where they're going to start to struggle. That's where the furthest that the bar is away from your hips at any given point during the exercise. So by having the bands in this position, we can focus on driving our hips to meet the bar. Now, this exercise works great as a main movement, especially if you do conjugate or max effort based training, because you can just do this for a heavy single and you're not going to get terribly beat up. But you are going to have to focus on rate of force development, as I mentioned, getting that bar moving off the pins, especially with the bands. But the key thing here is that it works great for big singles because of that reason. The other thing you could do is you could do doubles or triples if you really wanted to. Just make sure the weight comes to a complete stop between each rep. Otherwise, you're kind of cheating yourself. You don't want to bounce it off the rack at any point during the exercise. And the other thing is, if you want to use this as a supplemental exercise, sets of 1 to 3 are still kind of preferred. You would just do much more sets, really focusing on that position, trying to be as consistent as possible. The other thing that I will mention here is that doing higher reps is not going to exactly be conducive to helping your deadlift. So make sure this is definitely something you're doing. You're probably 80% plus of a 1 rep max to really get the most benefit from it. So not only you're working on that transition on the knee, but you're really driving your hips forward underneath heavy load and benefiting off of creating that rate of force development, but also going against the bands. So if you happen to have any questions, just let me know in the comment section below. Thanks. Have a great day.